Alright guys, got a new product I want to show you. I mean, it's nothing new on the market, nor is it new to me. Been using this for a while. This one resides in my desk. I was looking through my desk trying to clean up a little bit and realized I didn't do a review on this yet. This is the Lansky Blade Medic, and it's just a cool concept. It's the Blade Medic, and little logo or slogan that they use is, "It is first aid for your blade." And I thought that's kind of cool. Kind of funny. I was just telling Christina about it. It's actually a really versatile tool. You got a bunch of different options here for sharpening. I have a couple examples here. That stone is to dull that blade, so you guys get ready to cringe for that. But I want to talk specifically to, like, using a carbide sharpener. People ask me all the time, and of course I always steer people away from it. We're gonna talk about that a little bit in depth here. But first off, just an overview of this. These cost about, on Amazon, I think they're less than $11. They're $10 and change. If you get it directly from Lansky, I think they're charging like $15, so it's in that range. I don't expect to pay more than $15 for this. All metal construction. I'm actually going to weigh it here for you guys because it's a little bit on the heavy side. Not extremely heavy, but it feels about the same weight as like a medium-sized folder. So I do want to give you a weight on this. It is all metal construction. 3.34 ounces. It's pretty heavy. It's heavier than most sharpeners, but drop the knife. But with that, you actually get a really sturdy tool, so I don't mind it being heavy. Something to keep in the bag. I don't keep it in my pocket. Of course, it is, slimline. You could keep it in your pocket if you really wanted to, but it's not really necessary. I'm going to be using this knife to dull up and show you the whole sharpening process here. And I also have the Spyderco here to show you how you can sharpen serrations, because a lot of people are constantly asking me, how do I sharpen serrations? So I'll show you with that. But first, let's talk about it just in general here. Let me move this stuff out of the way without dropping it on the floor this time. Alright, so it's a compact little tool. One thing I really like about this is that you can use a hex driver to remove both these bolts, and the whole thing comes apart in two pieces. This is particularly nice because sometimes, especially if you're using the carbide sharpener, but even so, the ceramic rods, you can slightly rotate them, and you can shake out any kind of filings or anything that's in the frame here. It's not a huge deal, but it's a nice little thing that you don't usually get with other sharpeners. So this main drag over here, you can see everything's labeled, by the way, in case you forget what it is. It says serrated ceramic. What's really nice about this is that this is a tapered ceramic stone, and it's tapered enough. All right, it's enough of a point. Okay, right here, see it's triangular, but still rounded on the tip, not actually pointy. But that actually just fits perfectly into small serration patterns. All right, you can see we have the large scallop here. Actually, I'm going to use this as a pointer. We have the large serration pattern here, and then the small ones. Now, some people can sharpen this with a regular tapered stone, even something like this rod right here. This is a tapered diamond coated rod, and we're going to talk about that more in a second as well. But these, sometimes people can sharpen, but these are like impossible. Now, sometimes in the past, I've used the corner of flat stones to get in there because it's so acute, but it's not very accurate because it's so pointy. Sometimes you end up taking metal or deforming that actual curve. But you can sharpen serrations with this tool in two ways. First of all, this tapered diamond rod fits nicely right towards the tip. Let me get a super close-up shot of this, so make sure it's good focus here. It fits in nicely right here in these small serrations, okay? So you can use this for more aggressive sharpening, okay? And of course, with this part here, you just use it, follow the curvature. You have to go very slow, and of course, doing serrations, you're gonna do one at a time. All right, and they are chisel ground. Pretty much all serration patterns are. So you're basically only sharpening the front end. If you want to, on the ceramic part right here, you can finish it off at the last second. Let me show you that, how this fits in here as well. All right, I want to give you a nice angle so you can see this. Look at the difference right here, okay? See how that kind of hugs that curve very nicely? Now, of course, you got to bring it down an angle. Well, you're not going to be sharpening this side, you'll be sharpening the other side. But you can sharpen it here, just come across like that. Of course, very slowly and, longer strokes that I'm showing you here. But I want to give you a nice angle. There we go. You can see how that hugs that small serration pattern. That's the hardest thing for people to sharpen on serrations, are those tight ones. Now, not every company does this. Of course, I've talked to this before, but my favorite serration pattern is a large scallop. I don't like these little ones. I find that because they're so small and cute that they grab material. Unless they're really sharp, they end up snagging and tearing things instead of cutting them. But this is a very viable option to actually sharpen your serrated blades. So that in itself is worth its weight in gold for a lot of people. A lot of you guys out there do like partially serrated blades or fully serrated blades, but you just can't keep them sharp. And of course you can always send them back to get them sharpened from the factory, but it's a real hassle and a pain. So I like that quite a bit, that you have a ceramic and you have a tapered diamond rod. All right, by the way, this is very, very strong. Right now there's a tiny bit of wiggle, and the reason is because I use this as a punch more than once. I actually put this into some tin and hammered on the back here, and I was surprised it didn't break. It wasn't a purposeful, you know, demolition test or anything. It was literally like, I need to punch a hole in this tin, and I had nothing around except for this. I'm like, what if I do this? And it worked. All right, so that was very surprising to me that it didn't break doing that. So you can entrust, and this is a very strong tool that's on here. You can see in here, there's a little bit of a notch there. So basically when this closes, it just hinges open, and it kind of, almost like a slip joint, like a back spring, it just kind of sets in place by friction. All right, it's not very hard to take that off, but kind of holds it for you, you know, so while you're sharpening, of course, you got to hold it like this so downward pressure doesn't close it. If you were to sharpen upside down, it would just fold on you and you wouldn't get the right angle and it'd be more difficult. So hold it upside down like this, you know, do your sharpening this way. It's very sturdy. Again, the tapering, if you're using a straight edge, like on this knife, the tapering doesn't really matter. All right, so you're doing your sharpening, you still have the same flat surface all the way down to the tip. The fact that this actually tapers makes no difference for your straight edges. All right, but very, very sturdy. Okay, you have that nice diamond finish. It's an aggressive cutter. Okay, very simple to use. Of course, if you're doing this, you know, obviously be careful. I'm just used to freehand sharpening, but it's very easy to come down and slice your finger like this, so obviously be really careful. If you have to literally change hands, so you're constantly doing forward strokes away from you. It is a safer way to do it, but awkward to me. It's hard for me to keep a constant angle with my left hand, but anyway, just a little tip there for you. Should be something you should learn, you know, going both ways. But anyway, yeah, so the tapered rod is a really nice addition to this. When you push it down, it kind of clicks in place. Again, because it's kind of offset here, so it has to override that little notch, and then it kind of fits right down there. Doesn't want to open very easily. Again, that little wiggly here, it wasn't like that when I first got it. That's because I literally abused this thing, but it still works great. This tapered ceramic stone as well can be used for a flat edge. It doesn't have to just be used for serrations. Okay, so it's really nice. I find that these ceramic stones are more on the fine side. And this is the only thing that I don't like about this, but this is really very consistent with pretty much every, you know, pre-angled sharpener that I've seen, is that when you have a carbide sharpener here, you get a very aggressive cut into your knife. And to switch from that, which is kind of a really rough edge, not kind of, it is a rough edge, to go to, this is supposed to be like a medium ceramic rod. It's the same as this one. It's the same finish or the same type of grit in the ceramic, so it's more of a fine. So I find it, if you're using the carbide side here, the transition, it takes a lot more strokes on this part here to get it to actually finish off in a, you know, fine edge. Not a huge deal, it just takes a little bit more time, but it's not really a hit on this particular product because they're all like this. You don't really see, occasionally you'll see a carbide and then like a medium grit stone, like a diamond stone. That's different. I still like the ceramic. It's just I like this to be maybe a little bit more coarse, but it's honestly not a big deal. It's basically the difference between like a minute of sharpening and 2 minutes of sharpening. But I thought I'd mention it. Now let's talk about the ceramic, the carbide side. I always tell people stay away from carbide cutters. All right, the reason being is it's such an aggressive cutter. And I'm going to show you this in a second. And I'm going to show you, you know, just by a couple passes, how much metal is actually taken off. All right. It's extremely aggressive. Now, if you go to Lansky's website, they do give you a warning, and they tell you, which is nice because most you know, sharpening systems, even the paperwork you get with them, they don't say, hey, you know what, this is going to take a lot of metal off. And you know, credit to Lansky for pointing that out. And it's like literally a warning. Warning. I'm paraphrasing here, but you know, it's an extreme cutting, you know, process, and you're removing a lot of metal. And they only suggest you do this if you really need to. And the purpose of this tool you know, it's actually pretty versatile, but what I see a tool like this for is something you would keep in your bag if you're going backpacking or you're going out in the wilderness. You know, you're not worried about having you know, somewhat of a wavy grind on here by resharpening. You're not worried about losing a little bit of steel on your edge. You're worried about getting your knife sharp. All right, and although these are very aggressive and I don't recommend them and I don't like them, it will sharpen an extremely dull knife fairly quickly. So for emergency purposes, this is a great tool. As far as like something to use all the time, just stay away from the carbide one. You can still use the preset ceramic rods here, which pretty much it's standard across all sharpeners, but it's going to be 20 degrees per side for a 40-degree edge. That's an industry standard. All right, if you have Spyderco's, you know, from factory, they're 15 per side with a 30-degree inclusive, which means, you know, each side is sharpened at 15 degrees, so it's 30 degrees total. That's an exception. Spyderco is an exception. That's why their knives are so sharp from the factory. That's literally a more lean edge on there. But across the board, pretty much any knife, and even if you had to sharpen your Spyderco in here, it would just readjust it and resharpen it at 40 degrees. So it's not that big of a deal. I love this tool. This is a fantastic tool, and I highly, highly recommend it, especially for the price, to keep in your bag. Again, in the prepping mindset, you got a go bag, you know, you have an EDC kit on you or something. This is something worth carrying, even if it's in a bag in your car. But if you're going out to the wilderness and stuff, there's a lot of different sharpening options, even something like a regular stone. But when it comes down to it, you know, you really need a sharp knife fast. That's where you really want this carbide kit here. That's where it's going to shine, is when you just need a quick edge and you really don't care what it's doing to your knife, because it rips up your edge at first. All right, it's aggressively just taking away so much metal at once. But you know, you need that. All right, if your knife is extremely dull and you're in the woods and, you know, God forbid you actually are trying to survive or something, you're going back and forth and back and forth. It'll take you forever. All right, so this is a quick way to get an edge on there. I'm going to demonstrate that right now, but actually let's do a cut test on this paper as is. It's just a cheaper Walmart knife, Winchester branded, even though it's not. It's just some Chinese company. But here it is. It cuts. An edge. It's not the best, but you know what? It works. Cuts paper just fine. So anyway, that's the factory edge. Now let's take this rough side, and please turn away at this point. Realistically, if you're in one of those survival situations for real, or just playing around because it's fun, and you're hacking away at stuff and you hit a rock, you know, it's not impossible. You just dulled your blade out. Well, if you were to take a traditional stone and try to sharpen that, especially if you end up getting a chip in there, or, you know, your edge rolls over or something, it's gonna take a long time. It's a long process. Right now, you can see the metal that's been removed there in dust form. Here's our edge right now. Okay. Part of it's still sharp, but obviously not as sharp. Let's really make sure this is dull. Oh, it's killing me. Even a cheap knife, it's hard to witness. Alright, that is pretty dull. We've achieved dullness. Alright, well, I need some first aid for my blade. Well, you know, blade medic. So here's the deal with carbide sharpeners. Alright, here's where you'd really want it. You for these pre-angled sharpeners, you know, you want to keep it flat. It obviously has the angle you need. The only thing you have to do is make sure you're dragging it through straight. If you're angled, it's going to throw everything off and it's going to be funky. Alright, now I'm doing this because it's more comfortable this way, but the view you really want is this view. You start at the heel, okay, put moderate pressure down and drag towards you. Alright, I'm going to put this on the paper because I want to show you how much steel this actually removes. Alright, so pull it towards you. Be careful not to cut down. One inherent problem with this is that because it's grabbing that metal and shredding, you know, steel off your knife, it catches. It's hard to drag through. So you have a tendency to pull a lot of pressure on this. Be very careful. Don't obviously do this on your leg. Don't do it on any surface you don't intend to cut on purpose, because you can get stuck and then you have to use a lot of force, and then you pull through and you can very easily cut whatever's below, including yourself. So make sure you're not below, all right? And obviously you don't want to do this over a rock or something that's really hard to, because you know, you may not hurt yourself, but then you just, you know, dull that edge that you're trying to create. Just do a couple passes through here. It's very hard to actually drag this through. Now, so far, I don't know, about 4 or 5 passes. You guys can see this, but there's actual, those little balls. Here's my better idea. Let me show you this one. You can see those are chunks of metal, not metal dust, not metal filing. This is like machining metal dust. All right, you literally have chunks and balls and strips of steel that comes off. All right, extremely, extremely aggressive. And then what you end up with is a very crude edge, but you still have an edge. Okay, after a few passes here, although crude, it will cut through things. All right, much better than before. But what I want to show you here is that edge. See how it's very wavy and just the steel is just scraped off? Effective, yes. Here's the other problem too. You can see how it tapers off here, and I missed the tip, because as you're dragging through, you have a tendency to skip because there's so much resistance. All right, so I'm coming through here, and on the tip, it's kind of lightening up on me, and I'm not getting that tip as sharp as I'm getting the main edge here. So you might want to go back, and you can push through here. It's not going to be as effective by pushing, but sometimes, and I've experienced with these when I have sharpened with the carbide, that sometimes you just have to do that. Dragging through, again, it doesn't want to catch all the time. All right, on the heel it's fine, but especially if you're doing a lot of work on that tip, you got to make sure that's sharpened equally as well. It's just the resistance makes the whole process very difficult. All right, imagine, I don't know, these carbide sides on each side of the cutters. I mean, this is what you use to, you know, sharpen a lot of different tools out there, but very crudely. You know, if you're sharpening a really dull axe or something, yeah, you can use, you know, carbide sharpener. But anyway, it's kind of like I'm grabbing this knife. Get this to stand up. I'm grabbing both sides. Right, here's the carbide sharpener, right? I'm grabbing the edge, and I'm just getting a hold of that metal and just tearing off a strip. That's basically what it is. It's tiny little strips being torn off, as opposed to shaping it and finely sanding each side so that it comes to a more, you know, acute point. I'm just grabbing both sides and just, there you go. So let's do a couple more passes here. I'll show you what kind of edge we've created, and then we'll refine it with that ceramic rod. All right. So that, once again, take another look at that. Lots and lots of steel chunks. You see they curl up. They look like little balls, but actually it's a thin layer that's curled up. But that's a crazy amount of steel being ripped off your knife. All right, so maybe I'll pile that. I don't make too much of a mess here. And look, I'm gonna pile of metal. Just in a couple passes. There you go. It used to be our blade. So anyway, you get the point. All right, so let's see what kind of edge we have right now. You see parts of the edge, it's not consistent throughout, but part of that edge is actually starting to be sharp again. Going from like completely flat and dull, I mean, I don't want to do this. I don't entrust this now because there actually is some form of an edge. So then you switch over to the ceramic side, keep it nice and flat, drag through nice and straight, and reshape that. Now here's a little tip from me to you. When you go right from the carbide side, don't automatically go to the ceramics. It's what you're supposed to do, but I would be more comfortable going right to the diamond rod here. All right, it's more of an aggressive cutter. It'll shape that edge a little bit faster, so you don't have to use as many strokes and as much time. And you'll basically get the same performance in the end. It'll just save you a little bit of time there and some hassle. So now I'll go over and I'll use that ceramic side here. Now, of course, these pre-angled sides on any of these tools are very nice because it's very straightforward. You don't need to know anything about sharpening at all. All you have to do, again, is just hold it straight and pull it through. All right, so it takes all the thinking out of it, and it keeps a consistent angle. So now, after doing that, it's grabbing pretty bad somewhere in the middle here. Actually, there's a pretty good burr on the other side here. Let's try to sharpen that out again. I'm actually going to use this side here. Alright, give that another go. There we go. Alright, now we have a usable edge. Not the sharpest, not going to win any contests. But you know what? If you're in the woods and your life depends on it, it's going to cut stuff, and that's the point. Alright, let's take a close look up at that edge right now as we have it. So it goes from completely dull to, you see how wavy it is too, because that carbide is just, again, ripping it off. But the edge is fine enough at this point to actually cut stuff. And that's the purpose. It's not pretty. You're not going to like it with your expensive knives, but it'll get the job done. Alright, so highly recommended for any kind of pack, anytime you go into the woods. It's going to perform for you when you need it to, and that's the whole point. Not something I would use every single day, not something I would use if I have the time or the options to use other sharpening systems, especially for higher end knives, especially for knives you really like. You want nice, clean, even grinds. Sometimes us knife people are very, meticulous and picky, and we take extreme care of our knives. And to use something like the carbide, slot here, it's like torture because we take something that's so perfectly done and we just rough it up. But as you see, it does perform. You see that it's its purpose. All right, not something to use all the time, but definitely something that I want at my disposal if I really need an edge and I have a dull knife. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care about anything else. I want a sharp knife so I can do what I got to do and move on. So, awesome product. Definitely worth checking out. And like I said, highly, highly recommended for any kind of bob bag, go bag, bailout system, bailout situation, anything like that. Total must have. And great for camping too, for all types of tools. So, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.